What y'all listening to?
Limelight Highlight Podcast.
Welcome back to the Limelight Highlight Podcast, the podcast that brings all things positive into the limelight and highlights them for your listeners' ears to absorb and start your week off on a positive note. Before we get to the podcast, quick couple upcoming events, as I said before. Block gives back July 27th, Peace and Play from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. I want you guys to be there, join the block, and many other sponsors, including myself, for a Stop the Violence event at Rivera Recreation Center at 5th and Allegheny. They're going to do free meals for all the kids who attend. You'll have local organizations and plenty of activities throughout the day, so be sure to bring your kids, family, friends, young ones, little ones, old ones, all together to promote some positivity in their lives, as well as support the people in your community who are trying to make a difference in a positive way. July 27th, no ticket needed. Just pull up, have a good time. And September 15th, ladies, babes, Who Brunch, women's empowerment mixer that will be sure to get all the ladies who attend motivated and focused, brunching, branding, and bonding with inspirational young ladies from all walks of life with the guest speakers, vendors, and great brunch menus. You can learn all about different sponsors while you attend, like this podcast, for example. Tickets are just $25, and there's plenty of time from now until then, to get yours and see how you can get involved. If you want to learn more about the event and get all the latest updates, make sure to follow The Queen Corner on Instagram at @TheQueenCorner_, or you can even check out her website at www.thequeencorner.com/babeswhobrunch. September 15th, be there. Now, it's been a while, onto the podcast. It's been a while since I've gotten on the podcast to do an episode on how we can help the environment and climate change and all that jazz, I didn't do a poll this week on the social networks because I really wanted to dive in this story that I came across. As always, I get my good news from goodnewsnetwork.org in case you guys wanted to know and check it out for yourselves. I kind of want to give them their credit because they do all the work. I'm just kind of digging a little deeper and reporting on one story a week that I really enjoyed. I shared their, stories throughout the week. But anyway, there's been a lot of debate on climate change, from what I hear in the news and all that stuff. And from what I come across, most of the debate is not whether the climate is changing. Because if you took a simple science class, the planet goes through its changes. But the debate is more whether what we're doing to the planet, is it contributing to the rapid change? And the mass majority of experts pretty much say, yeah, we're causing the planet to undergo these changes at a much more rapid rate. And these scientists who come to this conclusion, they also come up with a bunch of ideas on how to slow this down and improve our chances, whether it be reducing plastic waste or coming up with biodegradable things. Shared a post about an avocado company out in Mexico that refurbishes the seeds and, recycles them and makes them into like cutlery, like plastic cutlery that's biodegradable. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm saying all that to bring up, back to this article. And this article is titled, "For First Time Ever, Scientists Identify How Many Trees to Plant and Where to Plant Them to Stop Climate Crisis." Pretty long title, I know, but I think it's a pretty interesting article, So just to start out, the word hectare is used it's used a lot in this article, and I had to look it up for the definition because I never heard that word before. But it's a unit of measure, and 1 hectare basically equals 100 acres, just so you guys know. Now, this article is about the Crowther Lab. And for people who don't know what the Crowther Lab is, it is a research group based at Zurich in Switzerland. And it consists of pretty much just a ton of experts in their respective fields of work. And they're all focused on one thing in mind, the climate. The reason I bring them up is because they published a study, in the article, they published a study in the Journal of Science that shows what would be the most effective way to combat climate change. And I distinctly remember from grade school, my science class, learning about plants and stuff like that, as well as a specific episode of the Magic School Bus, where Miss Frizzle takes us on a journey inside that plant to find out what photosynthesis is. and how it takes carbon dioxide and turns, produce oxygen. All right, I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to stuff like that. I like science. Science is pretty cool, not with numbers and stuff, but how things work. But anyway, safe to say that more plants, more oxygen, right? It's kind of the way, simple numbers work, or statistics, whatever you want to call them. Well, according to the article, around 0.9 billion hectares, or, for simple layman's terms, the 2.2 billion acres of land worldwide would be sustainable for reforestation. Reforestation is just, replanting trees in the forest to make basically a place that's been all cut down back to life again. And they're saying that, that area that would be suitable for reforestation, they would ultimately capture about 2/3 of man-made carbon emissions. So this lab did some research on, where in the world the trees could grow and how much carbon they could store. And they started plugging away at the numbers and statistics. So many numbers that I couldn't even really wrap my head around. But they put a ton of numbers that made a lot of sense to someone in this field, but I'll make it pretty simple for you guys. When I looked at it, they concluded that there is currently an area the size of the U.S. available to plant trees. And they also said that once these trees, mature and the new forests is all thriving and stuff, it could store about 2/3 of the man-made carbon that has been released into the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution. That is ridiculous. Just trees. I knew they took carbon dioxide and made oxygen, but I didn't know they stored man-made carbon the way they're explaining in this article. That just blew my mind, And the fact that they're going to do that with 2/3, statistically, and the way they did the numbers, 2/3 of the carbon since the Industrial Revolution. That's mind-blowing. I can't stress that enough. But with their studies, they came down to just 6 countries with the most potential to help, because I guess they have the most land. Number 1 being Russia. I know Russia's cold. I don't know how they plan on planting trees and them growing. I don't know how that works. But anyway, number 1 is Russia. Number 2 is us, the U.S. Number 3 is Canada. Number 4 is Australia. Another kind of, thing that made me think, like, how. I know they have a lot of land, but a lot of it's like desert. Nobody lives there. But anyway, number 5 is Brazil, and 6 is China. So the Crowther Lab, they actually have this website. If you want to go visit it, you can do so at thecrowtherlab.com. And if anyone's interested, I'll put in the show notes and their website. But anyway, on their website, there's actually a tool you can look at. And on this tool will, you can look at any point on the globe and find out how many trees should be planted, and if how many trees could grow in these specific areas, and how much carbon they would store. So you can do your own math and check your own numbers if you're really into that kind of thing. But it also has a list of restoration organizations there, and if you're interested in that, you can click the link and see how you can help out the planet. I thought this article in particular was extremely important to go over, with the way, like I said before in the beginning, with our politics and news, how everything's being distributed and everybody's always arguing about something but never doing anything. The Crowther Lab in itself is pretty interesting, because rather than doing research on building a clean energy machine or figuring out how to build a structure to help climate crisis, which I'm not knocking at all, because we definitely need those things, before what we were saying about the hybrid plane, or another previous episode talking about the huge wind farm, like all that clean energy is definitely still needed. But I thought this was super cool and important, and it was kind of different because the Crowther Lab is focused on helping the planet in a natural way, like planting trees. And it's kind of crazy to me that after all these years, we finally have an idea, based on science, nature, and mathematics to help save the planet, but it's simple. It's not a complex thing that we need to do is just planting trees. The more trees, the more oxygen. It's pretty simple stuff, especially for a grade school kid learning, science, watching the Magic School Bus and stuff. Granted, I don't know how long they've been doing this research. For all I know, they could have been working on this for years. But the fact that they came up with this stuff it's pretty amazing. And it's an effective yet simple way to do, But as usual, it's not all doom and gloom. I know we have a lot to do, but there are plenty of organizations out there trying to help. I mean, just on July 4th alone, I wish I didn't take off that day, but just mentioning it real quick. Just on July 4th alone, around 1.5 million volunteers planted more than 66 million trees in just 12 hours as a part of a record-breaking environmental campaign in India. So people are out there doing their work, they're doing their part, and there are people willing to help. They had 1.5 million people volunteer. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because Tommy, he's been on the podcast before. The leader of the Block Gives Back. He was catching up on all the previous episodes that he missed out. He had some actually pretty good input for future episodes that I'm actually going to start adopting. He mentioned how I'm always talking about getting involved and helping out, but I haven't really been going any further than that. And he's right. So from here on out, every time we have a story, I'll be listening to some organizations you can get involved with that match the subjects that we're speaking about, and all those organizations will be in the show notes. It's on you guys to click the links and do your research and all that stuff, because I can only do so much. But he had, I like that input. That's why I like to have an open lane of communication with everybody who's listening, and I want to make this podcast for everybody else too. But anyway, so luckily for this episode, the Crowther Lab, they kind of already did the work for me. So as I said before, go on their website, crowtherlab.com. There's a link that's labeled Get Involved. If you click there, it'll take you to a link where it shows 3 options on how you can get involved. It was like plant trees yourselves, see where they can be planted, like support, and then it's like invest your money wisely or something like that. So check that out. See what you can do. See how you can get involved if you're interested. And that's that. Now, for this week's listeners' good news, we actually have an article from Precious. Her Instagram handle is Peephole Assassin. It's a funny handle. But she was sharing with us some good news about some animals. Now, one of the largest wildlife preserves in Africa has made it a full year without a single elephant killed by poachers. Now, the Niassa Reserve is a remote region in North Mozambique. The words are really hard for me to just go over. Anyway, the last time an elephant was recorded killed by a poacher was May 17th, 2018. So actually more than a year ago. Shout out to the Rapid Intervention Police Force for cracking down on illegal poachers out there, huh? Back in 2009 to 2014, high levels of poaching were responsible for cutting the numbers of these elephants from 12,000 elephants to a little over 3,600 in 2016. But thankfully, to the efforts from 2015 to 2017, the numbers of killings has decreased to about 100 animals a year. That is a huge increase, or that is a huge decrease, a really good increase in good news, rather. And that's crazy. That wasn't even 100 animals a year, as in like elephants, 100 animals total. You know how many animals live there? Anyway, since then, the elephant populations bounced back pretty quick, especially after the efforts to deter these poachers. And that's always good news. So shout out to Precious. Thank you for sharing and helping out with this week's listeners' good news. And that about wraps it up for this episode filled with positive news. If you guys want to submit good news for future episodes, or if you participated in a good deed, or simply if you want to just say hi, you can do so by contacting me via Instagram or Facebook at Limelight Highlight. I'm also on Twitter at LL Highlight, or if you want to shoot me an email, you can do so at limelighthhighlight@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share, subscribe, like, comment, leave a rating on whatever platform it is you're listening, and it'll help spread some positivity out there to other people who might need it, Last but not least, once again, I can't stress this enough. If you're in the tri-state area, be sure to attend the Peace and Play Day with the Block Gives Black, July 27th. And if you haven't done so, go get your tickets September 15th. It's not too late. $25. Babies Who Brunch.